You are listening to Think Theory Radio. Radio. Hello and welcome to Think Theory Radio, the show that brings you topics outside the mainstream realm of thought and ideas to make you think. And I'm your host, Damian Perdue, your guide on this out-of-the-world ride of audio delights. And of course, I'm always joined by the man who is piloting and steering and manning the controls of the Starship Think Theory Radio, Paulie C.
Yo.
And today we are very lucky, and I'm very privileged to have on a special guest, Tim Aines. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you.
Tim Aines is an ex-intelligence officer with the U.S. government and now currently a MUFON investigator for the last 8 years, is it?
I've been with MUFON for 8 years. I've been investigator for about 4.
And for those that don't know, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. Am I correct?
That is correct. It originally started as the Midwest UFO Network,
okay.
Right here in Illinois. It's now currently a worldwide organization, but it started right here in Illinois. Now we have about 8,000 members in about 122 countries, and so we had to get rid of that Midwestern thing, and we went to Mutual.
It's kind of like how UFOs are now UAPs. You have to
Yeah, the terms changed.
Right. Are you guys going to switch up?
No.
It's too locked in now.
I think we're going to stick with MUFON.
Yeah. It flows better. What are you going to do? You know? So, before we get into the investigations you have done for MUFON, why don't you give the people a little bit of background about yourself as far as your work in the intelligence field with the U.S. military? What's your personal background?
Okay. Well, I grew up here in Chicago. Grew up on the South Side. Currently, I live out in the burbs, but
So you're a White Sox fan?
Yeah.
All right. No, we're up the White Sox fan.
I'm a world traveler. I'm a Cubs and White Sox fan. When you're sitting in Korea, believe me, you embrace both teams.
I can see that. Yeah.
I went to Northwestern University, and I went to graduate school at University of Southern California, and I was an intelligence officer in 2 branches of the armed forces, and then I was a civilian contractor around the Beltway in Washington, D.C., working for some 3-lettered agencies for about a period of about another 5 years, kind of doing the same stuff that I was doing when I was back in uniform, but I got paid more money and had to wear suit and tie.
Right.
But,
and signed some NDAs, right?
Signed a lot of NDAs.
Now, you in your intelligence work, you worked with spy satellites.
I did. I was initially trained. My specialty was spy satellites. And when I was initially trained on it, the fact that the U.S. government even had any was classified. And now it's not that the fact of is no longer classified. We do have them, and we can kind of talk about them generically.
Right.
And they're out there. And, I worked on a bunch of those.
Now, was there anything within, because, I'm thinking spy satellites, it's in space or low Earth orbit. Is there anything that happened within your career working with spy satellites that geared you towards, stepping into the UFO investigations, or is it just a coincidence that...
Well, great question. It, I guess, goes back to childhood. Like many members at MUFON, I've been interested in the subject since childhood. Other kids went to sign up for Little League. I went down to the library I was like, baseball? Who cares about baseball? I want to go find out who's flying in those ships around. If there's aliens up there, who cares about baseball? So anyway, I was a nerd like that, and then the military paid for my college, my undergraduate, and of course there's a payback for that.
Okay.
So when it came time for the payback, I kind of wanted to be a pilot, but my eyes slipped a few points, so I put in for intelligence work. And they just randomly assigned me to one of the specialties. The intelligence field is quite broad. There's imagery intelligence, there's signals intelligence, there's human intelligence, and then within those 3, there's subspecialties.
Yeah.
Just kind of random new guy coming in the door. They put me into initially the imaging satellite part of the business.
Well, and I know with the current disclosure that's been going on, I did read a couple articles about certain government agencies thinking, I think even NASA themselves were talking about information that's coming from spy satellites concerning UAPs or UFOs. Do you think this is something that we're going to get more information about, as far as, or is there anything that you were privy to as far as, satellite catching a, moving object or anything of that nature?
Well, satellites are, UAPs or UFOs tend to be fast-moving objects. Sometimes they stand still, but then they zap off. Satellites are really poor at tracking moving targets. They're designed to kind of sit on a certain spot over the Earth and look at one particular thing. They either stand still and look straight down, and those are called geostationary, and others are sort of walkers. They orbit around and they move. And to be sure, the lenses on the imaging satellites capture anything between that lens and outer space and what's happening on the surface of the Earth. And when you look at the imagery, you do see things like flocks of birds. You see lots of commercial airliners. You even see some missiles in the air. And yes, there's been interesting, round, triangle, different shaped objects that have appeared over the years that nobody knew what it was or where it came from.
Okay.
But typically, it's not what we were looking for. The reason we took the pictures because we were looking for maybe at the time of the Cold War, a Soviet missile silo.
Right.
And who cares about that UFO in the corner of the picture? Where's the silo? That kind of thing. Other times, you saw some really strange stuff. Probably, this is really, strange. One time we were looking, and we saw a woman being attacked by 5 Russian soldiers out in a field.
Oh, wow.
And that we were looking in the field for something else.
Yeah.
But we were like, geez, shouldn't somebody pick up the phone and make an anonymous phone call to Minsk police station number 22 or something, but that's not, we kind of just moved on. So you kind of got to know what was going to be on the 6 o'clock news a day or two ahead of time based on what you were looking at that day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun.
Now, and I know we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I one of the things I like to do on the show is kind of debunk some conspiracies, because I think it lends credence to the truth, really, if you can kind of get rid of the minutia and everything. So, and one of the kind of big, and because satellite, you work with satellites, so I thought of this, was the black satellite, right? So it's a very kind of internet conspiracy, UFO.
The Black Knight?
Yes, the Black Knight.
The Black Knight satellite. Okay, so well, for the listeners that don't know what that is, that there's an object in space. It's been photographed by NASA, and the photographs have been released, and it's this irregular-shaped, pure black object that's kind of reminiscent of that black monolith from Space 2001 Space Odyssey, but it's not square. It's irregular shaped and kind of creepy looking. And the thing is, that one we could shoot that one down for 2 reasons. One is logic, and the other is scientific history.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, do you think for a second that the big 3, Russia, China, and especially the United States, would allow an alien satellite to sit there and orbit unmolested, and we would just let them do whatever it is they're doing out there? We would be all over that thing like monkeys on trees.
Right.
If we would go up there, we would probably put it in the back of a shuttle and bring it back down to Earth and tear it apart. And if it didn't fit in the shuttle, we'd probably tear it apart up in space. And quite frankly, if we couldn't do it either, we would probably destroy it.
Yeah.
And if we didn't, the Russians or the Chinese would. No one's going to allow a strange object like that to be floating around the Earth that we don't control here on Earth. So that's kind of the logic part of it.
Yeah.
But the science history part of it is much more prosaic and mundane. So back in 1998, there was a shuttle mission 88 called STS-88. And it was a significant mission. It was a 12-day mission where the space shuttle was docking with the International Space Station, or what was the core module of the ISS at that time. And they were bringing up a module from the U.S. side. It was called the Unity module. because the space station is assembled like a giant Lego.
Okay. And
the Russians bought up a module, and we bought up a module, and the whole thing was bolted together like sort of a Frankenstein city. So in 1998, they were bringing up the Unity module, and the two astronauts on board, Jerry Ross and James Newman, excuse me, were trained, like all astronauts, not to drop any litter into space. So even if the astronauts are trained not to drop one bolt or even the tiniest screw, because even though it goes floating off into space, it's actually going around the Earth at 18,000 miles an hour.
Right.
So, littering is a bad thing in space. And if they do litter, it's an object that gets tracked.
Yeah.
So, astronaut Ross and astronaut Newman, they dropped 5 things that we know of. They dropped a trunnion pin cover. They dropped a retractable tether, an object called a worksite interface socket, and a slide wire carrier. And the last thing was this thermal blanket.
Okay.
And it's a dark, big black blanket that was covering the Unity module.
Okay. Like a shroud kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I've heard that one, that's pretty much what it is, right?
Yes, it is. So that's absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
If you, when the astronauts let that thing float away, they knew they were in a little bit of trouble.
Right.
So they grabbed a camera and they took pictures of it, and because they wanted to document that it flew off.
Yeah.
And later, when the mission was long over, NASA released the photos from that mission that were taken by the astronauts' cameras.
Yeah.
And somebody saw this black, spooky-looking thing floating off in the orbit, and the internet trolls jumped on it, and it became the
Black Knight
satellite. And there's 25 different stories.
Yeah.
It's been with us for 20 years. It's been with us for 100 years. It's been with us since the beginning of the planet.
Yeah. That's why I always thought it was kind of fascinating, because the way it ties into the, kind of ancient astronaut theory. And I always knew that that's pretty much what it was. It's just a thermal blanket. But, there's that part of you that kind of wants to believe that it's something else, that it's, this remnant of an ancient, civilization or, kind of first technology. But I think that which, we're talking about before the show, and I said, I'm a skeptical believer, right? And we were talking about MUFON, and I said, well, it's a huge organization. It's bigger than I thought. And you were saying how, we're all
open-minded skeptics.
Open-minded skeptics. That's
so if you're a skeptical believer, you'd be a wonderful member of MUFON.
Okay. Are you guys hiring?
We're looking for open-minded skeptics that are willing to apply the scientific method.
Yeah.
And to solve a mystery. And if you've applied all the branches of science and you still have a mystery, then we call that an unknown. And unknowns are a good thing, because that means it's been vetted, it can't be explained away, and it merits further study and research.
Yeah, and I thought that was really, you sent me the link to, so it's called, you're part of the ERT, or the Experiencer Resource Team.
Right. So as we kind of went around the world, investigating UFO sightings, we found about 7% of the people told us, well, it wasn't just a ship. I actually had an interaction with an alien. And I didn't want to tell you about it in my report, but when you strike up a relationship and you talk to them and you debrief them, they come forth and they go, I think I actually was abducted, or they were standing next to my bed. And a lot of these people are very rattled.
Yeah.
And some have had their religious beliefs destroyed, or they're questioning their worldview. And so within MUFON, it was decided that, can't just let these people languish without any help. Some of them really need some help. So we put together a team of experienced investigators, but we're looking for something in addition for that. We're looking for patient counselors who are willing to be non-judgmental and let somebody tell their story. A lot of these people who claim to have had abductions, they just want to tell their story. They just want to be heard, and that alone allows them to shake off a lot of the tension and the pressure, and they just want to be heard. Yeah, and they want to know that somebody's listening that won't think they're crazy. So that's our role. we're investigators, but that people on that team are specially handpicked. They tend to be there's sort of a gray hair factor involved. You know, we don't put young kids that haven't lived enough life on that team. So I'm the deputy director of that team. We have about 67 people on that team around the world that that do that kind of thing. The abductees themselves are an interesting lot. About a third of them, well, you know, we have people with mental health issues that you're dealing with on this team, and that's why we're so selective of who we put on the team. But about a third of the people are either on their meds or off their meds, or they went on meds when they had after they had the experience.
I'm sure.
Another third are folks who are drama people. Prone to drama. They are sleepwalkers, or they're just having really vivid dreams. But the last third are kind of the real deal.
Yeah.
And we have a good screening list of questions that sniffs out the real deal. We don't release what they all are to the public so that people can't fake the experience.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that happen to abductees that they all talk about. And people have seen stuff in the documentaries and scary movies, right? They're things like missing time, or they might have marks on their body. But, you know, where the marks are and what the marks look like, you know, we have pretty good knowledge of that. And it's interesting when somebody in India and somebody in Des Plaines, Illinois, and somebody in Fiji all have, you know, the same mark.
Yeah.
And they're telling a similar story. So that's the challenge of the ERT.
Now, you were talking about too the percentage that when you first got involved with MUFON, you thought, oh, this is going to be, you know, one or two people here and there, and as you started to work, you explained the numbers, which is when you told me, I was like, wow, that's
great
so much
question.
more than I thought.
So when I first got picked to be on the ERT, the abductions have probably been going on since who knows how long.
Yeah.
But the first modern era abduction is generally considered the Betty in Barney Hill incident, which happened in September of 1961 in New Hampshire. And that case got worldwide attention. There was hypnosis involved, and under hypnosis, these dramatic, you know, scenes came out of them being on an alien craft. So that kind of triggered the modern era of abductions.
Yeah.
And so when I got on board the team, I'm like, well, so how many of those could happen in a year here in the United States? Since I knew I'd only be working cases in the United States, so I thought, maybe 2 or 3 a year. Well, we know from our experience and the fact that there's 8 billion people on the planet, we can extrapolate. For instance, we know from sightings in the sky that about 1 out of every 10 people will actually take the time to submit a detailed report to us online.
Yeah.
We know from abductions it's about 1 in 50. They have people that don't know we exist, or they don't know how to find us, or they're in another country, they don't have computer access. So using that kind of 1 in 50 mark, we think it's about 1 million people a year worldwide on a planet of 8 billion people are experiencing some kind of abduction.
Yeah.
It's a staggering number, I know, but on a planet of 8 billion people, it's less than 1%.
Right. And then
sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
And
well, it's more than I thought.
And that doesn't count the cows.
Right.
The cows that get abducted in the animal mutilations.
Now, see, okay, is that something that's still... Because I know, like, in the 80s and 90s, that was a very big thing. But I don't hear that much about, you know, the cow mutilations and cows mutilations.
We had a big case last summer.
Really?
It made the mainstream news for about a day and a half out down in Texas. They found a bunch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's still happening.
The cows are, you know, there's no footprints around them. It's like they're dropped from the sky. There's not a drop of blood in them. The tissues are surgically removed.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing, or the flesh is completely deboned off of the animal. We have people who specialize just in that stuff.
Yeah. I did see a documentary on the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And it had, like, some of the cases there. It was... Pretty interesting. That one's a...
Yeah, that gets in a whole weird area out
Yeah.
there. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I know for a fact that people... It's become so hot that people in the U.S. government in the D.C. area are looking for excuses to do quote-unquote official trips to go out to Skinwalker Ranch as part of their job.
Yeah.
Because they want to see for themselves. They basically want to be looky-loos, but they're coming up with some trumped-up excuse why they have to go out there. Well, among the people who do, they're given an official briefing that when you're on the property, be careful of your thoughts. How's that for strangeness? They're told, be careful what you think.
Yeah.
Like, if you go on this piece of property and you're expecting demons and evil things to happen, that tends to happen among the people who are expecting that. And
right.
if you go in as an open-minded skeptic that maybe this is an opportunity to experience something new, another life force, and you don't have any prejudgment, those people tend to have a more interesting, non-scary experience.
Yeah, but I felt like they kind of showed that in the documentary because you had more scientists that were involved.
But what's interesting to me is the government's building it into briefings. Like, you're required to get this briefing before you go there.
Right.
So that tells you the government's, believes that there's something going on there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Have you personally talked to anybody who's been there?
No, I have not.
Okay.
No.
Now, actually, we got to take a quick break, and then we will be back right after this commercial break with Tim Aines, MUFON investigator, and many more questions to go.
Okay.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today I'm joined by Tim Aines. He is a MUFON investigator and assistant director to the team. And for people that don't know, if you're just tuning in, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and they do a lot of investigation, not just with UFO, but with people who claim to be abductees. And that's your main field, right? That's what you do.
I still do mainstream investigations of lights in the sky here in Illinois, but I'm also on a special team, a much smaller hand-picked team that deals with people who've claimed they've been abducted or had an abduction or an experience maybe with an alien, but it didn't necessarily involve an abduction.
Right, like they show up on the side of the bed.
They've had some kind
something.
of claimed alien contact.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, and you've been doing this for, you said 8 years, right? Is that about right?
I've been a member of MUFON for 8 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how many people have you personally talked to or interviewed about this?
I've done over 200 cases so far.
And are they generally all in Illinois, or have you been...
We generally work geographically, so I work for a state director, a really talented gentleman by the name of Sam Moranto, and he, the way it works is somebody comes home from a day at work, and they find a black triangle floating noiselessly over the top of their house. Okay. And the first thing they'll say is, "Oh my gosh, call the cops." Right. And then they stop and think, well, wait a minute, what are the cops going to do? So then they Google, who do you report a UFO to? And MUFON usually comes up, or they know about us from the shows. There's usually a MUFON talking head on Ancient Aliens or any of those UFO documentaries. We're the largest and oldest UFO organization out there. We've been around since 1969, so a lot of people already know about us. So they'll file a detailed report. It's kind of like a crime report. Okay. And it asks all sorts of stuff, like weather and what direction did it come from, which direction did it go, did you see, rivets or markings or all sorts of detail. It then goes to the MUFON headquarters, which is the world headquarters is actually in Cincinnati. Okay. And there it gets an initial screen, or it's actually looked at by some administrators of the computer system. Yeah. Which actually can be located anywhere. And then from there, they send it to the country or the state director of the state where the incident happened. The state director, in turn, then assigns the cases that he or she thinks have merit, and to one of their available investigators. So I get assignments from the state director here in Illinois, but I also get assignments from the director of the experiencer resource team, the team that deals with abductions and alien contact.
Okay.
So I get both kinds of. They're two kind of separate buckets,
cases,
but I work both.
Now, as far as the people who claim to either have made contact or been abducted, do you get, like, right off the bat, you can meet somebody and you kind of know if they're BSing or not, right?
Yes.
You're like, do you get that, or is there some people that you have to go through the whole process before you can figure out if they're telling the truth or not?
Well, we're human, and some of these people are looking for attention or personal gain, and those tend to be shorter interviews. And people who are scared. And I don't know what to do, and those tend to be the much longer interviews, and we want them to be much longer interviews because these are people that are psychologically upset and they need possibly some resources. So one of the things we offer at the end of the debriefing that we give them is we ask them if they're interested in working with psychological professionals or hypnotherapists, if they're interested in doing regression therapy. We ourselves don't do that. We don't have any dog in this fight. But over the years, you wouldn't believe how many people who are hypnotherapists or psychologists have had their own experiences and say, "Hey, I believe now."
Yeah.
And by the way, if you have anybody who has this experience as well, I'm willing to work with them and help them because I'm not going to poo-poo it. I know that this is a real thing.
Right.
So over the years, we've compiled a list of these people who've approached us. We kind of vet them in terms of that they're real psychologists and that they're out there practicing. And then if the person wants, we'll give them the information of who is in their area that they can contact to, have one-on-one sessions with a real therapist if they want. But we screen them in terms of we know that they won't be poo-pooed or sent home saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous,"
right?
That kind of thing. Also, we give them a list of online. Some people don't want to do face-to-face. They just want to be in some online support group where they can tell their story among other people, and we have a list of groups that we share with them where they can do that as well.
Now, aside from the markings on the skin, have you come across any cases where there's physical evidence left behind? Some kind of a alien cell phone or something, or just any kind of
none of the cases,
substance left or something?
None of the cases that I've worked.
No.
But we do have what are called markers of abduction.
Okay.
So, the most common one that gets our attention is missing time.
Yeah.
So somebody will say, I was working in my kitchen and I had this overwhelming urge to go out in the backyard and look up at the sky, and I can't even tell you why.
Yeah.
And I was out there for 10 minutes, maybe 15 tops. And they go back in the house and 6 hours have gone by.
Wow.
So they're kind of freaked out about that.
Yeah.
So they want to talk to somebody about that. What happened? What happened to me? Am I crazy? And so, we tell them, no, you're not crazy. You're in a special club of people. You look at it upon it as kind of a gift. You're now in a special club.
Right.
Go about, live your life in a normal manner, but this has happened to other people. But tell us your story. We're more interested in listening than directing or trying to. We try not to solve the problem for them. We're kind of like special counselors more than investigators on that team.
Yeah. Now, do you find the ones that have the missing time, if they do hypnotherapy, do they start to remember anything from the abduction?
Hypnosis does not work on everybody.
Okay.
About 50% of the time seems to be the experience. There's certain people that just can't be hypnotized. But about 50% of the time it does work. They can be hypnotized. But then that being the case, it doesn't mean you're going to get under hypnosis what you think you're going to get.
Yeah.
But some very, very interesting things have come out. People have written books and cashed in on it of what came out under their recorded hypnosis sessions. So it is a tool. It's not universal. It doesn't work on everybody. But we look at several markers. We look at things like unexplained marks on the skin. Sometimes there's a bioluminescent mark on the skin. Paralysis is a common complaint. Like they were there and I was screaming, but my screaming was in my head and I couldn't move my arms and legs. they'll wake up in a different location, or they'll complain that when they did wake up at the end of the experience, their clothes were misbuttoned, or even inside out, or they were facing the wrong way in the bed. They were at the head of the bed, the foot of the bed instead of the head of the bed. Sometimes we have a list of probably about 30 abduction markers that we take a look at, and we don't release them all to the public because we don't want people
right. You don't want to
being able to fake it,
or even like I was like subconsciously just kind of sticks in their head.
But
and then they can use that.
One of the interesting things, though, is the TV shows and documentaries all make it look like everyone's terrified,
right?
And to be sure, everyone says, this really kind of blew me away. It's really scary, but. One of the interesting things to me when I got into this line of work is how many people can't wait for them to come back. Over half I'd say half, tell us that they're not afraid of them anymore and they can't wait for them to come back, and they kind of feel like they're friends.
Okay.
And
do they have like a thinking that if they come back, there'll be more of a more conscious experience? Like they'll be able to like kind of talk with them now that they've gone through the primary abduction.
The responses are as unique as there are people on the earth. I had one guy said, I live in a 3rd floor condo and I heard my sliding door open and I went out and there was this reptilian person standing on my doorway. On the sliding door, and I threw a chair at him because I was terrified. And with one leap, he leaped off the balcony down to the ground and landed like Superman and just walked away with one leap, standing upright. And he goes, I felt like I blew that encounter. Right. Because he didn't actually threaten me, but he was so scary looking. Maybe he just wanted to talk to me or tell me I was going to be the president of the United States. And instead I threw a chair at him and he says, I want him to come back. I want to redo.
He was the one guy that the alien was going to tell him everything. He's like, oh, nope, you blew your chance.
Right. So, so I guess the point of that is not all of them are terrified, scared people that are traumatized for life.
Yeah.
About half of them are, I would call them enlightened people that are eager for more contact. And then that brings up a whole different area. So when we do get a contactee, one of the more interesting things is we say, have you told this story? Are your parents still alive? And they'll say yes or no. And if it's yes, we'll say, have you told this story to your parents? And they'll go, oh, no, I can't tell my parents this. They'll think I'm crazy. Yeah. And we'll say, we really strongly recommend you share this story with your parents because you might get an interesting response. And when they do, about half the time they come back and go, oh, my God, one of my parents said it happened to them when they were little and they never told anybody, and now they're freaked out because it's happening to me. So then we say, are your grandparents still alive? And if they are, we say, we really strongly suggest you go talk to your grandparents and share the story.
Yeah.
And because that generation really never talked about that stuff.
Right.
And among the people who do, about half the time, again, they come back and go, oh my God, grandma or grandpa said it happened to them, and now they're freaked out, and they never told a soul. So what we've seen a lot of times, it's generational. Not everybody who has an abduction experience is a one-off.
Yeah.
Some of them, it seems like they're interested in something genetically in certain families, and they drop in once every generation to check on something.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it seems to be of genetic in nature, and then they put you back. And then probably your kids are going to get checked on too. And that kind of weirds people out. And then that quickly gets into the really obscure cases. This is not something that happens all the time or even frequently, but we've had missing pregnancies, women that are pregnant in the first trimester documented. They have an ultrasound. They're absolutely medically pregnant, and they have an experience, and they're not pregnant anymore.
Oh, wow.
And we have... That has driven most of those people, by the way, join MUFON.
Yeah.
Because
they want to find out what
famous people that's happened to that are kind of leaders in our organization and have written about it.
Yeah.
And then we have a big symposium every year at MUFON. It's kind of an annual get-together of all the field investigators, and it's open to the general public.
Okay.
This year it's going to be at the end of July in Irving, Texas.
Okay.
Anybody can go. But the presentations are always fascinating, and most of the investigators are going to be there, and the presenters are really interesting. Last year, I learned about, I already knew about missing pregnancies, the occasional missing pregnancy among abductees, but somebody gave a presentation about missing twin syndrome. And we have at least 2 documented cases where the woman was medically proven to be pregnant with twins, absolute ultrasounds, absolutely, hard proof. And the delivery day comes, but before the delivery day comes, she has some sort of ET experience. When the delivery day comes, only one baby comes out. And it's not because the second one is still born. There's literally nothing there. There was 2, now there's only 1. And the 2 mothers, as you can imagine, were quite upset.
Yeah.
The doctors told me I had 2.
Right.
Should I sue them for malpractice? How come only 1 came out? They both had a follow-on experience of an extraterrestrial nature, and they both asked the extraterrestrials, and this is in their statements, did you have anything to do with my missing baby?
Yeah.
And both of them, independently of each other, got the same response. They said that the aliens said, 1 for you, 1 for us. And that's kind of a whoa kind of thing.
Now,
so you're always learning something new.
Yeah.
I didn't know about missing twin syndrome.
No, I haven't heard of that one either.
So it's called missing twin syndrome. This is not coming soon to a theater near you.
Right.
This is really, the odds of this are like 1 in a bazillion. But we have at least 2 cases where documented missing twin syndrome, and many more cases of missing pregnancies.
Now, it actually gives me like 2 different questions. One is, when in these investigations, when the people say that they've communicated with the aliens or the extraterrestrials, is it verbally or telepathically? In
every case I've worked, it's always been telepathic.
Yeah. That's what I've heard, but I was wondering if there's the one, hey, actually talk to me, as he speaks English.
I think I've not one of my cases, but I did read a case where they were taken up to the ship. They worked with the gray aliens, the ones you see at all the TV shows and movies. And then a Nordic came in. We have 5 alien types, by the way.
Right.
People used to argue about it, is there such a thing as UFOs? Nobody's arguing about that anymore. They're arguing about how many species there are.
Okay.
In general, everybody agrees on 4, and some people have gone as high as they say there's 55 species. So the argument continues about that number. But this one claimed abductee went to the ship, had an experience with the Greys there. They were sort of freaking out and very scared, and the Greys are not violent, and in general, and they sort of left the room, and then some very human Nordic-looking kind of people came in, and they talked to them in normal verbal language. That was the only case I ever heard where that happened.
Now, if there are these, different species or types of extraterrestrials, are they, if this case is true, right, and you had the Greys and then the Nordics came in, they're obviously working together, is this some kind of federation of planets, or is it varying kind of a
it's
competing?
The opinions are as wide as there are people involved in this line of work. We appear to be visited, if judging by the reports and the statements that we look at, by 4 main species, and I'm going to, in my personal opinion, add a 5th. Okay. There's the Greys. There's actually several varieties of Greys, but they're all Greys. They're kind of the Close Encounters of the Third Kind looking kind of. There's the Nordics. They look like us, but they're taller. They have perfect skin. They have blue eyes. Okay. There's the reptilians. The reptilians are, the reports on them, they tend to be, and this is where you got to keep an open mind, shapeshifters. And then we have the giant praying mantis. And that's, I don't think I've heard that one. That's the one that scares everybody, but the interactions are very benevolent, if not kind, and some people have reported healings from interacting with the praying mantis. One guy was just fishing out on the side of a river out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And he looked down the riverbank, and there was this 6-foot mantis standing there. And he said it was exactly like the praying mantis that you see in your garden, but it was 6 feet tall. And it looked at him and ran off into the woods. And then, so that's 4. There's the Greys, the Nordics, the reptilians, and the praying mantis. We have a lot of reports. And my personal opinion, I think Bigfoot is a 5th species.
Now that I have not heard.
There's too many Bigfoot sightings, but we've not found a breeding population, and it's incomprehensible that we can't find a breeding population. There are ones, the sightings are all 1s and 2s, and I think Bigfoot comes here to recreate and blow off steam and explore and vacation, because we've had at least 2 or 3 reports where they're seen at the controls of ships, taking off and landing through the windows. Yeah. I've personally read 2 reports of hunters who were out searching for a wounded deer or trying to do hunting, and they came around a path and they ran into a Bigfoot, and out of just sheer terror they pulled the trigger and they shot the Bigfoot, and it disappeared into a flash of light. So
teleportation.
So if this is, an earthly species, I would think that if it gets shot, we'd see blood coming out or something coming out, and we would have found breeding populations that would sustain it. And Bigfoot sightings tend to coincide with lights in the sky sightings. And that's my personal theory. I think they're a 5th species that are visiting us.
That's interesting.
But not everybody agrees with me, of course.
You know what? We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to ask you about are they benevolent or not, and also more about MUFON and some of your investigations. Right after this on Think Theory Radio.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today I'm joined by MUFON investigator Tim Aines. And MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. And we've been discussing lights in the sky. We haven't really got into the ancient alien stuff, but, if we have time, we'll get there. And differences between abductees and people who have just made contact. And also you investigate the lights in the sky sightings. Now, before the show, you were saying that there are kind of regional sightings. Now, did you mean that certain UFOs are specific to different regions, or how do you mean?
Any UFO can be seen anywhere in the world of any type, size, or shape.
Yeah.
But I've working cases here in Illinois. I've coined a term, Black Triangle Alley, down in southern Illinois.
Yeah.
We had a lot of Black Triangle sightings. One of them was very famous. It happened on the year 2000, on January 1st or 2nd.
Yeah.
They made a couple TV shows about it. It was a UFO that flew low and slow in the middle of the night from east to west.
Okay.
And it was chased by 5 police departments on the Illinois side, crossed the Mississippi, and then it was chased by 3 departments over on the Missouri side. And of all those police departments, only one of them filed a report on it. And that guy wound up getting interviewed by the media. But that's just one of many sightings we have down there.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of black triangles. And so I get asked about that a lot. Personal theory, again, it's my personal opinion, I think some of the black triangles are ours and some of them are theirs.
Okay.
And ours are based on theirs that we've sort of reverse engineered and probably recovered. And then on there's a pattern on the ones down in southern Illinois. Geographically, southern Illinois kind of comes to a point down there on the map.
Yeah.
So you have Kentucky off to the east, and you have Missouri to the west. So it's almost like there's a flyway of black triangles that cross the bottom of that tip of Illinois, coming back and forth from at least Kentucky and Missouri. And the black triangles are kind of seen eastbound early in the evening.
Yeah.
And they're seen westbound a few hours before sunrise. It's almost like they have to return. And so among the more savvy witnesses that I work with and I debrief that have the proper apps on their phone, or they're ex-military and they know how to do compass bearings, I'll say, could you do a compass bearing for me? Can we go out to the side, or can you go out to the exact spot where you were standing and give me a compass bearing on, you know what tree it last disappeared over the top of, right? And
Yeah.
they go, yeah. And I go, can you give me a compass bearing on that? So they'll give me those compass bearings, and when I plot them out on a map and extend the lines out, probably 7 times out of 10 they lead right to the runways at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, which is home to the B-2 stealth bomber, which is kind of triangle-like, but it's not. There's no mistaking.
Right.
I'm a knowledgeable person, or even a not a knowledgeable person. The real UFO black triangles look exactly like a full black triangle.
Yeah.
And the B-2 is sort of more like a bat wing kind of shape.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of flight pattern, too.
Yeah, but the point is, it's a military base that's set up for stealth operations. And there's more than one Area 51 out there.
Right.
And so people like to jump on Scott Air Force Base down in the south part of Illinois.
Yeah.
Scott is just a sleepy cargo logistics base.
Okay.
The only thing they have there are cargo planes, refueling tankers, and an ambulance aircraft. And it's pretty open base. There's no big dark secrets at Scott Air Force Base. But Whiteman's a little different. That's where it's the only place in the world we keep the stealth bomber, because we want it well inland in case there's a nuclear strike. They don't want them near the coast.
Yeah.
And so they would be well set up for some other stealth operation. And the predecessor for this is the stealth fighter. So the stealth fighter flew only at night from 1971 to 1977 because the Air Force didn't want to admit that it existed. And so the pilots were called the vampire pilots. They only flew at night. They slept all day. But yet, sightings leaked out. People saw these strange things flying around at night. Some people got some fuzzy, blurry shots of them.
Yeah.
So finally, the Air Force came clean after 7 years and said, okay, it was really us. We have this thing called the stealth fighter, and we're going to release it to the public and show it to you. And, it was a black project.
Yeah.
Just like the SR-71 Blackbird was in the U-2 spy plane in the early days. So putting that all together, these black triangles, or our version of the black triangles, this could be just another program that hasn't been released yet to the public.
Gotcha.
And when I extend the lines out on the map, it leads to Whiteman Air Force Base. So it's not oogie boogie dark conspiracy stuff. It could be just a routine black project of the next generation aircraft that you'll be informed and do course about when the time is right.
Now, for me, obviously, I think most people too, they always, and I've seen videos of the triangles you're speaking of too, but obviously there's the flying discs, is the most common, but then there's the orbs, which I feel like is, it goes back to like the claims of the Foo Fighters in World War II. You can go back if, depending on what you believe or how you want to interpret things, kind of old biblical stories, Ezekiel's wheel, and but now I think you're starting to get a lot more footage of these orbs around. What do you know about those?
Well, so now we're getting into the paranormal or pseudo paranormal.
Okay.
So the official mission of MUFON, we don't do paranormal, but we do because when it ties in with a UFO sighting.
Right.
So, if you see lights in the sky but then they land in your yard, and then aliens walk through your wall, they melt the wall in your bedroom and walk right straight through it. Right. Yeah, that's kind of paranormal. Or you see orbs come through your wall after the UFO lands. So we don't scientifically have an answer what the orbs are. Okay. And we're a science-based organization, but every investigator like myself has their personal opinion. My personal opinion, I think shape-shifting is very common among the advanced developed species in the universe.
Okay.
We use it for scary horror movies to have somebody turn into a werewolf.
Right.
But I think it's an economical way for energy to move around the universe. And the purest form that you need to do that in is as an energy orb. And then when you can move around, and then when you get to your destination, assume whatever shape shift you need for that planet or environment is my personal theory.
Yeah. So the orb itself could be part of the
the orbs are
engineering.
Our own laws of physics say that energy never dies; it just changes form, right? And then you could apply that to everything, including your own human death.
Yeah.
What happens to you after you die? Well, there's that ball of light thing, and you go towards the tunnel of light. So there's a recurring theme here. So we do investigate orbs when they're associated with the larger subject.
Okay. Now, I wanted to get back. I was talking about kind of, are they benevolent or not? Because I think of the majority of sightings, videos, and everything. Now, obviously, the cow mutilations or the stolen babies is not very benevolent, but I feel like, at least as far as the vehicles themselves, you never see any like shooting a laser or physically attacking anything.
Right.
So, in your opinion, are they benevolent, or what's the
I think the most common way to approach the best way to approach the subject is take a look at what they don't do. Okay. Do they land on the lawn of the White House or the Kremlin and say, "Take me to your leader"? No, they're not doing that. Could they? Absolutely. Are they sending down droids and robots in a War of the Worlds scenario to shoot lasers and take us over? They're not doing that either.
Right.
And by the way, they could have done that hundreds or thousands of years ago when we weren't in an advanced state. They wouldn't have had to wait to this point of our evolution to do that. So what's left is basically the zoo theory. Again, personal opinion. I'm not speaking for MUFON, speaking for myself. The evidence seems to indicate to me that the planet is a giant petri dish, and there's several species and races that are sort of watching over us.
Okay.
And maybe we're some sort of grand experiment, or they're waiting for us to develop to the point where we can interact with them and join the quote-unquote Federation of Planets.
Right.
We'll see what happens.
Now, kind of leaning to that, and you're having a lot of disclosure now, with the David Grush and the Pentagon hearings. And so this is kind of a double question. One, what do you think about that? But two, with our technology advancing, with drone technology and, kind of deep fake stuff and easily manipulated videos, one, what's your opinion on the Pentagon hearings? Two, do you find it harder to investigate now with the technology ability to fake things?
Imagery has been ruined. Artificial intelligence and Photoshop has destroyed the credence value of imagery, because you can make an image sound like everything now. So that's that. The disclosure train, though, it's very encouraging, because we have senators and congressmen saying, "You're holding out on us." They've never done that before.
Right.
Since 2017, you have the U.S. Navy releasing, that was quite a breakthrough.
Yeah.
In 2017 is the first time that the official active U.S. government released something and said, "We don't know what this is. It's sort of a UFO."
Yeah.
And then the real disclosure book actually came out in 1997, but nobody paid attention. There's a book out there called The Day After Roswell. It was written by a guy by the name of Philip J. Corso, who had a career in the U.S. Army from 1942 to 1963, and he was given the task. In his book, he had an interaction with the aliens twice, alien-related stuff. So the day after Roswell, literally, he was a junior captain in the Army. He was involved in the transportation of the bodies from New Mexico. And then in early 60s, he was given the parts off of crashed UFOs, and he parted those pieces out to different U.S. contractors under a cover story that we captured this from some Russian aircraft. We don't know how this works. What is this? And can you make one of these?
Okay.
And that has allegedly given us fiber optics and circuitry and a lot of other things.
Ah, okay. Well, unfortunately, we have to end it there because our time is up. But I definitely want to, thank you for coming on. It's an amazing discussion. Definitely want to have you back on. And real quick, if people need to reach out, how do they contact you or MUFON?
Well, you go to MUFON.com if you want to file a report. Rather than contact me directly, is a way they could contact you at the station.
Yeah, they know how to get to me, so they can hit me up and I'll give it to you, or just go to MUFON.com. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again next week and every Saturday, 6 to 7 p.m. right here on WCPT 820.